The modern world repeats a quiet assumption that fertile soil is fragile. Those crops demand fertilizer. Without bags of nitrogen and carefully measured chemicals, the ground grows tired and yields collapse. It sounds reasonable, scientific, modern, but for thousands of years, entire civilizations grew food without fertilizer at all. Not once, not occasionally, continuously. Fields produced harvest after harvest for centuries, without chemical inputs, without synthetic nutrients, without the soil ever running out. And the strange part is not that this system existed. The strange part is how completely it vanished. Not from one region, not from one country, from nearly everywhere. The soil system that once fed millions slowly slipped out of textbooks, out of agricultural policy, and finally out of memory itself. Because it had one quality that modern systems struggle to tolerate. It could not be easily controlled. It could not be easily owned. And what cannot be owned rarely survives modern industry. You are watching Seed Life Botanics. This channel is not a place for trends or headlines. It is a quiet archive. A place where buried agricultural systems, forgotten plants, and ancient survival knowledge are opened again, carefully, patiently, the way one might open a sealed document in an old archive room. If you find value in these recoveries, subscribe, not for growth, but for preservation, because knowledge disappears the same way soil erodes, slowly, and often without anyone noticing. Tonight's archive begins in a landscape that outsiders once described as impossible, a place where rain arrives in violent seasons, then disappears for months, where rivers swell into floods, then retreat into narrow channels. And yet, in this difficult land, farms flourished for centuries without fertilizer. To understand how, we have to travel to the Amazon basin. Long before modern Brazil existed, long before colonial maps, the forests of the Amazon were home to hundreds of indigenous societies. Many of them practiced agriculture, but their farming did not resemble modern fields carved out of land. It looked different. European explorers who entered the region in the 1500s described villages surrounded by gardens and orchards. They saw fruit trees growing in dense clusters, maize fields rising from rich black soil, sweet potatoes, cassava, peppers, beans, food everywhere. This puzzled them, because the natural soils of the Amazon are notoriously poor. Most are heavily leached by rainfall, thin, acidic, nutrient-depleted. Agricultural experts long believed that large populations could never have survived there for long, and yet the historical accounts insisted otherwise. Villages thrived. Populations were large. Food was abundant. The contradiction lingered quietly for centuries, until the soil itself began revealing a secret. In scattered patches across the Amazon, researchers began noticing something unusual. Fields of soil darker than anything around them. Not brown, black, rich, dense. When farmers encountered these patches, crops grew vigorously. Maize rose taller. Fruit trees thrived. Yields remained high year after year, even when surrounding soil struggled. The indigenous communities had a name for this soil: terra preta, black earth. And unlike the natural soils nearby, terra preta behaved in a strange way. It did not lose fertility. It gained it. To understand why, scientists began digging deeper into the soil itself. The first clue was charcoal. Not ash. Charcoal. Tiny fragments, scattered throughout the earth like dark grains of sand. But this was not the charcoal from accidental forest fires. It had been deliberately made, thousands of years earlier. Indigenous farmers had taken organic waste, branches, leaves, crop residues, bones, food scraps, and burned them slowly in low-oxygen fires. The process created a form of charcoal now known as biochar. This charcoal was then mixed into soil along with food waste, pottery shards, manure, and plant matter. Layer after layer, year after year. The result was something remarkable. Biochar has an internal structure filled with microscopic pores. To the human eye it appears solid, but under magnification, it resembles a sponge made of carbon. Each pore becomes a tiny shelter for microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, life invisible to the naked eye. These microbes begin breaking down organic material, releasing nutrients slowly and steadily. At the same time, the porous charcoal holds water like a reservoir. During heavy rains, nutrients remain trapped inside the soil rather than washing away. During droughts, moisture lingers. The soil becomes stable, alive, self-renewing, and perhaps most astonishing of all, biochar does not break down easily. Some fragments found in terra preta soils are more than 2,000 years old, still working, still supporting life. The soil becomes a living system that improves over time. Not a resource to be consumed, but a partnership. Indigenous farmers were not simply planting crops. They were building soil that could sustain generations. Historical accounts begin to make sense when seen through this lens. In the year 1542, Spanish explorer Francisco de Orellana traveled down the Amazon River. His expedition reported densely populated settlements along the riverbanks, fields of maize, gardens, fruit orchards, food stores. For centuries, historians doubted these reports. Later travelers saw mostly scattered tribes and dense forest. But something catastrophic had occurred between those visits. Disease. Introduced by European contact. Entire societies collapsed. Population numbers fell drastically. And without the communities maintaining them, many agricultural systems slowly faded back into forest. But the soil remained, buried beneath layers of vegetation, waiting. Even today, archaeologists continue discovering new patches of terra preta scattered across the Amazon basin. Some cover only a few acres. Others stretch for miles. Each patch is a quiet record of human knowledge that endured for centuries. Evidence that soil fertility did not always require chemical intervention. Evidence that agriculture once worked with ecological processes rather than against them. And yet this knowledge did not spread widely beyond the region. Not in the way modern agricultural technologies spread. Because terra preta carried a problem. A quiet incompatibility with the emerging industrial system. Industrial agriculture depends on uniformity. Fields planted with identical crops. Predictable inputs. Predictable yields. Fertilizer delivered in measurable quantities. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But terra preta does not behave like a formula. It grows slowly. It develops differently in each location. It depends on organic waste streams, on microbial communities, on patience. You cannot simply manufacture it overnight and apply it uniformly across thousands of acres. It emerges through time, through culture, through local ecological knowledge, and perhaps most inconveniently, it cannot easily be patented. Charcoal, food scraps, organic waste. These materials exist everywhere. Anyone can make them. Anyone can build fertile soil with them. This made terra preta, in a sense, unmanageable, unownable. And systems that are unknownable often struggle to find a place in modern economic structures. So agriculture moved in another direction. Synthetic fertilizers, mass production, rapid yields. Fields became dependent on external inputs. Nitrogen factories, chemical processing plants, supply chains. This system produced enormous harvests, but it also carried a hidden cost. Soil began losing organic matter. Microbial diversity declined. Erosion accelerated. Fields that once built fertility slowly began consuming it. And each year, the system required more input to maintain the same output. The ancient soil builders of the Amazon had taken the opposite approach. They invested in the soil itself, and the soil paid them back for centuries. In the late 20th century, scientists began re-examining terra preta more carefully. Soil samples revealed something remarkable. These ancient soils contained nutrient levels far higher than surrounding land. Calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, carbon. Even after centuries of tropical rainfall, the nutrients remained locked within the charcoal matrix. Modern soil science slowly began confirming what indigenous farmers had already known. Biochar stabilizes carbon in soil for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. It provides habitat for beneficial microbes. It improves water retention. It reduces nutrient leaching. It creates a stable environment where soil life can flourish. Research stations began experimenting with biochar amendments. Crop yields improved. Soil health increased. Water requirements dropped. Yet, even as this rediscovery gained attention, the ancient system remained strangely distant from mainstream agriculture. Partly because terra preta cannot be mass-produced overnight. Partly because it requires patience. And partly because modern systems had already built enormous infrastructure around chemical inputs. Changing direction is difficult once an entire economy depends on the existing path. But the soil remembers, and the evidence grows quietly stronger. There is another layer to this story, one less biological and more human. For many indigenous communities, traditional farming systems were disrupted by colonization, forced relocation, and cultural suppression. Knowledge once passed through generations of farmers became fragmented. Languages vanished. Oral traditions faded. Farming methods tied to identity and place slowly dissolved under external pressure. And when knowledge disappears from living communities, it often becomes invisible to outsiders. Researchers may rediscover fragments later, but the cultural system that sustained the knowledge may already be gone. This is one of the quiet tragedies of agricultural history. Not only were ecosystems altered, entire knowledge networks vanished with them. The soil remained as a record, but the people who built it were rarely credited as scientists of their own land. Today, the world faces a strange contradiction. Modern agriculture feeds billions, but the system itself shows signs of strain. Soil erosion removes billions of tons of fertile earth every year. Topsoil disappears faster than it forms. Chemical fertilizers sustain yields, but often degrade soil structure over time. And climate instability introduces new uncertainties. Droughts, floods, heat waves. In such conditions, resilience becomes more valuable than efficiency. The ancient builders of terra preta understood resilience deeply. Their soils held water during drought, retained nutrients during floods, improved with time rather than declining. And perhaps most importantly, they required no factories, no global supply chains, only knowledge, charcoal, organic waste, time. It is a quiet system, patient, slow, but extraordinarily durable. In recent years, some farmers and researchers have begun experimenting again with biochar-based soil building. Small farms, regenerative agriculture projects, ecological restoration programs. They are not recreating terra preta exactly. No modern system can fully replicate the cultural and ecological context of the Amazon civilizations that built it. But they are rediscovering the principle. Soil is not merely a growing medium. It is a living system, one that can either be exhausted or strengthened. And the difference often lies in time horizons. Industrial systems optimize for seasons. Ancient systems were often planned for centuries. The black soils of the Amazon are proof. Even today, farmers who inherit land containing terra preta often report exceptional fertility. Fields remain productive with minimal inputs. Long after the societies that created them disappeared, the soil continues working, quietly, faithfully, as if remembering its original purpose. Perhaps the most unsettling part of this story is how close the knowledge always was. The soil never vanished. It remained beneath forests and fields. Archaeologists walked across it. Farmers planted it. Yet the system behind it remained largely ignored. Not hidden, simply overlooked, because modern agriculture had already chosen another path. But nature rarely forgets the systems that work. Given time, evidence returns. The soil darkens. Crops grow stronger. Microbes rebuild the invisible networks beneath our feet. And somewhere, quietly, the ancient knowledge waits again, not demanding recognition, only patience, because the soil does not rush. It does not argue. It simply continues, year after year, century after century, building life from the smallest fragments of carbon and time. And perhaps that is the final lesson hidden in the black earth. The knowledge was never truly lost, only ignored. Nature rarely asks permission to endure. If you value the preservation of buried ecological knowledge, subscribe to Seed Life Botanics. Not for the algorithm, but for the archive. Because the soil beneath us still holds stories, and many of them are still waiting to be opened.